Seem a lot. 60 years between the group, 60 years of yacht. Load up the rifles and load up the guns. Prepare for battle, oh Finland's sons. Many of you won't make it through. It's Friday night on the Russian front. What else is there left to do? 60 years between the groups, 60 years may seem a lot. 60 years between the groups, 60 years of yacht. Seem a lot. 60 years between the groups, 60 years of yacht. 60 years between the groups, 60 years may seem a lot. 60 years between the groups, 60 years of yacht. Soldiers in white, watching and waiting and biding their time in the dark of the night. In the center of Rimaki, maybe up for a fight. Between the groups, 60 years may seem a lot. 60 years between the groups, 60 years of yacht. Load up the rifles and load up the guns. Prepare for battle, oh Finland's sons. Many of you won't make it through. It's Friday night on the Russian front. What else is there left to do?
Hello, welcome back to the second live stream for the Orthoverse, and a whole bunch of stuff went wrong in the previous one, so let's see if we can top that in this session. I'm still getting used to the fact that I'm talking to a camera and a screen. It's worse than a Zoom call, but I think it's the kind of thing that, given time, I'll probably get used to. I found an extra camera so I can do cool things like this. Have a side profile and a front-on profile. And what's more important is I found a significant bug in the Orthoverse, which explains a lot of what went wrong in the previous session. It was a memory leak, and the fact that I was running all of this on a less powerful computer with the streaming software running as well probably explains why I was having difficulty maintaining a connection with the Orthoverse. So I found the bug, I fixed it. I'll talk more about it later, but I think the best thing to do is probably to enter the Orthoverse and actually start seeing something interesting. So let's get going. Here we are. The Orthoverse is Doomed, the title screen. Those of you who have not been in before, it's at orthoverse.land. You can see that up there in the top left. You don't have to have a token in order to go in. Anybody is welcome to walk around, but if you actually want to build stuff, and why wouldn't you, then you need to go and get a token at orthoverse.io. And because the price of Ether has gone up in the last week or so, they have now rocketed from the perfectly reasonable price of $2.50 per token up to about $5 at the moment, I think. That's nothing to do with me. The amount of ETH that it takes to buy one has remained the same, except for gas prices. It's just that ETH is now worth more. I guess it's kind of like if you use dollars and you go to Europe and then the exchange rate changes and suddenly you find your dollars are buying you a lot less, or if you're lucky, a lot more. I've also got my lucky bottle of Finnish pear flavoured fizzy water, and I'll take a sip of that so that I can actually speak well. So a slight cold or cough coming on, unfortunately, but it's not so bad that I can't do this. Anyway, let's get logged in. You click play. Here's the log on as guest if you don't have a token. I fortunately do, and if I didn't, it would make for a very dull show, so I wouldn't be able to build anything. And I'll sign in. And conveniently, of course, the Orthoverse is in the middle of night while I start this, making everything a bit gloomy. But don't worry, nighttime in the Orthoverse is very short. The daytimes are 3 times longer than the night, and you can still see reasonably well. It's much better than it is outside here in Finland, where it gets light at about 10 o'clock in the morning and then gets dark again at 3 in the afternoon, and the sun doesn't even make it above the trees. So I can see in the chat that we've got a whole bunch of people who've joined, and that's excellent. Do ask questions, and I'm going to try and look across to the comments more often so that I can actually see what's going on and perhaps interact a bit more than I did last time. Because I think last time I was so focused on trying to get things working and demonstrating what you could do in the Orthoverse that I shamefully failed to pay attention to what people were saying in the chat. So fingers crossed I can get better at that, and it is a learning process, and so the more I do it, the better I should get at it. It's like playing a musical instrument. You know, you first time you pick up a guitar or a pair of drumsticks, it's too much to keep track of. You know, if you're playing guitar, you've got your right hand, your left hand holding the guitar correctly, hitting the right strings with the right fingers, and it's all a bit overwhelming. And then with a mere 10 years practice, hour or 2 a day, you can actually get quite good at it. So let's get walking. Over here on the right, we have the author henge. Initially, when I built this, I was really proud of it. I thought it looked very, very nice. But then, since then, I've seen the kind of things that people are actually building in Minecraft and Roblox and games like that. And yeah, that makes my efforts here look not so good. So those of you who were here last week will maybe remember that there was a much better castle to begin with. Now what I've done here is I've loaded a previous version of the land, and this is when you have a level 7 token. You can up the levels of your tokens at orthoverse.io, you get a big fancy castle like this. If you've only got a level 0 token, then you have no castle at all, and level 1 gets you a little tower, and so on and so forth. I hope you guys can all hear me, by the way. If you can, maybe someone could drop a message saying, yep, you're loud and clear, or no, we haven't got a clue what you're saying. It's like you're talking through a pillow or something like that, and then I'll see what I can do to correct it. Anyway, here I am in Fangwania, which is one of the tokens I own. Oh, great. Thanks, Cyan Age. Nice to know that everything is just fine. So I thought I would start off by giving a little building hint, which is you can load and save your land if you're on it. In fact, you'll notice at the bottom there are all these circles. That shows that I'm in a land that I own. And if I roll the... yeah, very funny, JC, that saying pardon. Great. I'm going to ignore that comment. Yeah, if you're in your land, then what happens is this these little dots appear along the bottom. In fact, I'll point them out with the mouse for those of you who don't know where the bottom of the screen is, which is presumably none of you. So if I walk out of my land, they disappear, and that means I can't edit the author henge because I don't own it. So it's a bit like real life. You're not supposed to go into your neighbour's garden and start building stuff, or you get in trouble. So here I am on a land that I do own, and I've got these little dots at the bottom, and if I use the mouse wheel I can roll them backwards and forwards. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dig a block. I know this is remarkable stuff. So I'm going to dig this block here, and it turns into a garlic. That's a an in-joke in the Orthoverse. And then I pick it up, and there we can see it. It's dirt. And then with the right click button, I can place it. So that's the principle of building in the Orthoverse. It's similar to other voxel games like Minecraft and Roblox. The controls, to be honest, I think are actually a bit simpler than Minecraft controls. Oh, and we've got the sun coming up, so that's nice. I'll actually be able to do this in daylight. So I'll mine that block, and I can actually reveal an amazing new feature. Be prepared to get blown away. If I mine grass, it turns into dirt, and then when I put it back, the ground is, well, it's not grass anymore, it's dirt. And that bugged me this week, so it took about 3 hours all told. But if I hold down the control key when I'm going to place some dirt, there you go, ta-da, it actually has grass on top, and you'll notice that the dirt in my inventory has now become grass blocks. So this is one of the great things about building your own game, is that if there's something you don't like, you can waste an entire evening and the next morning and fix it. So let's put that back and make it look a bit neater, and we'll put that one back too. There we go. So I roll the cursor over the dirt and control right click, and it puts down some grass. Yeah, I know this isn't earth-shattering stuff, but I think it's kind of lots of these little things, when you've implemented them, add up to make a bigger whole. So and by whole I mean W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E. The sum of the parts is greater than the individual pieces. So just tinkering with it and adding these kind of things, I think, will make things better. But anyway, I said I was going to give you a building hint if you're going to go off to your own land, and that is to make sure that you have at least a level 2 token, and that gives you 2 save slots. So that means if you press 1, you save what you've built to slot 1, and if you press 2, you save it to 2, and if you hold down shift and press 1, you load what's in slot 1, and if you hold shift and press 2, you'll load what's in slot 2. So I'm very fortunate here that I have 7 slots because I'm a level 7 land. That makes it a kingdom, and that means that I've saved the build that I started working on in slot 7, and I was mining underground to get all sorts of blocks, because you don't have to dig very deep in the Orthoverse. Let me show you. To go down, you don't have to dig very deep and instead of seeing granite and dirt around you, at a certain point you will start seeing all sorts of oddities. I've got a question from Iron Age, which is, what is this built with? This is built with a project called Prismarine JS, which is a from the ground up re-engineering, or a darkroom engineering of reverse engineering of Minecraft. And so what those guys there are doing is they are writing a Minecraft compatible set of libraries so that they mainly can write Minecraft bots. There's one of the components is called Mindflayer, and it allows you to write JavaScript programs that control your character in a Minecraft server and make it move around and do stuff like detect blocks, maybe build a particular structure. They can even, I think one guy is doing some machine learning stuff, so it's sort of trying to work out how to find things and build things. So it's clever stuff. And there are two other components, Flying Squid, which is a server, and Prismarine Web Client, which is the client. And because it's all open source, I took what they provided everybody with, and I've hacked it up to make my own game. So it's built along the same lines as Minecraft, but then again, Minecraft was built along the lines of a previous game called Infiniminer. So the original programmer Notch got the idea for Minecraft by playing Infiniminer and then thinking that he'd like an equivalent game, but where he was walking around in nature in his native Sweden. So that's the history behind Minecraft. And for this, I've taken a Minecraft clone and substantially hacked it, and also put new graphics over it. There's a Canadian chap called Andre Jolicoeur who is an artist, and he has designed all sorts of textures and skins and things like that for Minecraft, and I licensed these textures off him. So that means that it's it has actually got nothing to do with Minecraft, even though admittedly it does look fairly Minecraft-like. The build data, where is it stored, is a question from Iron Age, and the build data is stored on the Orthoverse server. So at the moment, if you get an NFT in the Orthoverse, it gives you the right to build, but indeed we are storing the data in a central manner, and I think that makes sense for now. The internet isn't fast enough, and decentralized file systems are not really quite at the point that you could deploy something like this in a truly decentralized manner. But who knows, it's early days. Maybe in 5 or 8 years time we can start moving, or maybe even next year, depends at the rate of progress. We can move some of the components out into a more decentralized system, which would also be beneficial to us, because ultimately that would mean that we wouldn't be hosting the server, we wouldn't be paying the server fees. I mean, they're about I think it's about 800 or 1,000 euros a year to keep this running, and so that eats into the profits, of which there are virtually none. It is a bit of a labor of love. Anyway, what was I doing? I was digging down into the ground in the Fangwania land in the Orthoverse, and here you can, what have I done now? Did it just go dark? No. Oh, I just placed a block, that's what I did. Right, so I go down a bit, and now I'm at a level where you can start seeing blocks that might actually be useful. So up here we've got some, well, which one was that? We've got cobblestone wall, cobblestone slab, redstone slab, things like that. So these would all be useful things for building with, and that's indeed what I'm going to do now. I'm going to start mining various blocks over here, because I'm going to build a second house in my land in a little bit, because I did say that one of the things I was going to do in this is actually build some structures. So the reason why I'm doing this is I'm currently mining blocks underneath the ground in my land that I loaded from save slot 1, and then when I've got a good inventory, I'm going to load slot 7, which has my actual build of interest in it. So you can use this to end up with a lot more materials than you would think at first. And Richard and I did have this idea that maybe we should sell the materials at a very reasonable rate, you know, sort of $1 for 600 blocks. But I didn't feel entirely comfortable with that, because it feels a bit like those free-to-play games where, yeah, they're free to play, and then you discover that if you don't buy stuff, you're really never going to make any progress. Okay, so I've managed to pick up, I don't know, I should have memorized how many of the various blocks I needed. So I'm trundling along here, digging up slabs and blocks of red sandstone. Is that sand? Yeah, I'm going to need these steps too. Steps, it turns out, are really important in Minecraft building. They allow you to create the illusion that you've got more granularity and more pixels to work with than you would think at first. So I think I mentioned this in the last video, that the mind becomes attuned to the fact that the world is made of blocks, and then suddenly you come up with a block that's been placed in such a way that it looks like you have blocks that are an eighth the size of the normal blocks. So PFC Wells, that's a good point. I wonder what the point was. I'm sure it was good, but I don't know which one you're referring to. And Mixed Ground is saying, Gandalf live, how grand. Yes, it is. I've been alive for over 50 years, and hopefully I will continue to be live for the rest of my natural life. Okay, so here we are. I'm trundling along and picking up those garlics. I wondered, 42, that I think we're probably going to have enough for a roof now. So I was thinking about Minecraft building and, of all things, poetry, because one of the interesting things about building in Minecraft is it kind of relates to the same process that goes on in poems, right? We have the English language, or if you're writing a German poem, God forbid, then you have the German language. And what we do in poetry is we set artificial limitations. So in English we say you want the words to rhyme at the end of the sentences, maybe inside the sentences as well, and there's a pattern that the rhyme may have to have, and there's a meter, the sort of flow of the sentence that is important. And if you follow the right pattern, then you may have written a sonnet or a triolet or something like that. There are these different names for some of these structures of poems. Oh, that was a bit of lag, and my avatar ended up dragging behind me. I haven't actually looked at what I look like. I wonder what happens if I zoom out. There we are. That's me in the third person. But what was I saying about poetry? Right, yeah, so we set artificial limitations on what we're allowed to do, and then say, now write a piece that is meaningful using those restrictions. And that's what turns it into an art form. And then, of course, some people decided, hey, we've been stuck with these limitations, let's go for blank verse and have no limitations, which is kind of an art form by rebelling against the structure of the art form. But how does this relate to Minecraft and building? Well, if you're just in creative, then you can, in something like Minecraft, you can create, you don't have to mine blocks, you don't have to be careful that you're going to die, you can and then you're just purely limited to the physics of the world. You have a certain set of blocks. Can you make something with a bit of effort that people find grand and interesting to look at? And there are some people out there apparently who actually do extreme virtual world building. So they'll go into something like Minecraft and they'll set it to a survival mode, and they'll make it incredibly difficult. So they'll put it on the hardest level. I think they do. I don't know if there are hardest levels in Minecraft. And then they try and do something like build the Taj Mahal without getting killed by creepers or spiders or things like that. So and that's why I think it sort of relates to poetry, because they've basically put a restriction on the work that they're doing to make it harder. Other people might say, I'm going to build something, but I'm only allowed to use these 4 kinds of blocks. Can I make something that looks more interesting than the usual build by that restriction? So I think one of the interesting things with the Orthoverse is that it's not survival at the moment. Maybe I'll add some survival elements in later. But it's not creative either, because you can't just create as many blocks as you like. You actually have to go and retrieve them from underground. So, and to me, that's kind of a reasonable balance. There's a bit of work involved, which means that it's not quite as trivial as just clicking a button and there you are, you've got another 64 bricks. But it's also not as hard as trying to struggle through in survival. So, as I said, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to gather together a reasonable inventory so that I can then go and build a house, a companion house to the house that's already up there that you will see in a bit. Oh, what about revenue model? Oh, right. That's PFC Wells was commenting that the previous comment of that's a good point was to revenue models. So, and another question from PFC Wells, which is this Minecraft or Minetest? It's Prismarine JS modified by me quite dramatically. Prismarine JS is an open source clean room implementation of Minecraft in JavaScript, so it doesn't use any of the code. There's very little in the way of mechanics of games that you can actually patent, and you certainly can't copyright mechanics. And this isn't using any of the original artwork, and it's using an open source project that doesn't have a single line from Mojang's Minecraft in it, so it should be in the clear. We'll see what Microsoft says when this actually gets on their radar for real. But it should be okay. And as I mentioned earlier as well, Minecraft was actually a copy and alteration of a game called Infiniminer, and Infiniminer I think was related to something again and different again. So you know, people like saying there's nothing new under the sun. I think that's a quote originally from Ecclesiastes, so it's quite an old saying. We do just kind of discover things and then we kind of tinker with them and build them out, and then people take the idea and alter it slightly for their own use, but there's very little new that is done. Right, okay, I am now, what have I got so far? 52 steps, blocks and slabs for the roof. I've got 21 of these, that should be enough. I wanted to get oak, I don't know why, maybe because it's more sort of Tudor building style like, and that's what I'm going to be going for when I build. There's some birch turning up underneath. Right, so I guess it's kind of hard to make this interesting, but I did watch a whole bunch of Minecraft Twitch streams. Sorry, I thought I'd put my phone to silent. Let's do that. Yeah, there's I watched a whole bunch of Minecraft Twitch streams, and like some of these streams they've got thousands and thousands of viewers, and quite honestly, in a lot of them what you were doing was watching somebody do very much what I'm doing now and saying very little in the process. So maybe I'm talking too much. Maybe I should be doing it more like this. No, that seems rather tedious to me. What do you think? Okay, so PFC Wells has commented, I wonder if this would be affected by the whole open game license thing. Minecraft under Microsoft argues rights to everything even if they had no input on it. Well, I think you've hit on a bigger problem there, PFC Wells, than just Microsoft claiming the rights to anything vaguely Minecraft-like, and that is major American tech companies claiming the rights to everything under the sun. So one of the things that I do is I follow the situation with patents very closely in the United States, and in 2011 the US passed an act called the America Invents Act, which was supposedly passed in order to make it easier for small-time inventors like myself to get patents more easily. And it did actually have that effect. The process was a bit streamlined. They offered more assistance to inventors, especially pro se inventors who couldn't afford attorneys to help them through the process. And the patent examiners are actually, if you are pro se and you clearly don't really know what you're doing, they are A, meant to recommend you get an attorney, and B, they are now allowed to give you some assistance and provide suggestions as what you might want to do in order to get your patent granted. And that probably sounds really, really great. But unfortunately, they also did a second thing, and that is they created something called the Patent and Trademark Appeals Board, the PTAB, which has picked up the nickname Death Squad for Patents, because they are a separate part of the US Patent Office with judges who are not appointed by Congress. They're I don't know who appoints them actually, but it's certainly not Congress, and I think it may be the Patent Office itself. And they offer a streamlined service to overturn patents that were granted that somebody subsequently thinks maybe shouldn't have been granted, which again on the surface sounds sensible, but the problem is that it's pretty cheap, and the tech companies in the US have been using it like crazy to try to overturn any patent that they are told they are infringing. So they find a patent that has some technology that they like the look of, they effectively steal it, and then when they get sued for infringement, they take it straight to the PTAB. And 80% of patents that go in front of the Patent and Trademark Appeals Board get overturned. So that's a pretty high rate. And indeed, there are sometimes patents that are granted that really shouldn't have been. An examiner is a human being. They only have so much time to investigate what's going on, so they do make mistakes. But 80% seems like an awfully high failure rate. And it's odd because if you get a patent and your patent is then overturned in PTAB, you don't get a refund. I mean, this is like going into a car showroom, paying for a car and driving it off the lot. And then somebody on the street comments that the car that you have bought from the showroom is not street legal, and they make that comment to the showroom, who then sends a tow truck round and tows your car and doesn't give you a refund. So there's very few businesses that work like that, but the United States Patent and Trademark Office is one of those. They'll charge you to give you something, and then they'll decide later, no, actually, we're going to take it back off you. And if I sound like I'm bitter, well, it's not happened to me yet, but I do live in fear of it, so I probably will be bitter if it does, because it's a lot of work to get a patent and it's not cheap. And you think when it's granted that that's the battle is won. It turns out no, it's not, and the odds are now stacked against you and in favor of large American companies. But hey, that's modern life, right? Could be worse. I could be a serf in a medieval feudal system with no rights at all, and spending my time growing crops and wishing that I could make it into a university. Right. Okay, so slowly but surely I am building up a fantastic reservoir of items. I'm getting a bit fed up of doing this. I'm sure you are getting a bit fed up of watching it, but you've got the idea. And I'm going to hit H, which is teleport home. And I'm going to use that as an opportunity to drink a little bit more water, keep my throat in a good working condition. Oops, I'm always doing that with the lids. Okay, so I tell you what, while we're at it, why don't we go and use the other camera too? We get a side view just to shake things up a bit and make them a bit more interesting. Okay, I'm back above ground. What I could have done, of course, is I could have dug a staircase all the way out of the mine, which is what I would have done if I was working away at a land that was far away from the Orthohenge. In the future, I'm going to make H give you a pop-up list where it offers you the opportunity to either teleport to the Orthohenge or to a token that you own. And I can argue that the reason why I'm doing that is to help builders, because it's very tedious to dig your way out of a hole. Excuse me. Fizzy water. Maybe I should go for still water next time. So it's very hard to dig your way out of a hole. You have to build a staircase back up. And so having a button that you can press it and it takes you back to above ground would be nice. There's a second point behind this though, because whenever you see a decision that's been made, sometimes it's just purely for the benefit of the users or players in a system. But if I was to do that, then that would mean that anybody with a collection of tokens dotted around the Orthoverse would have an own private teleportation system to be able to get around quickly, and that would mean that more tokens would be sold, and that would therefore drive revenue. Plus, when all the tokens are sold out, people might actually make offers for tokens that are at the edges of the world, because owning one of those means you can get to the more remote parts more quickly. So it may seem like an altruistic offer to allow teleportation to your own land, but as is always the case in games and business, you can spin it into something that has a great business model. Anyway, I haven't implemented that though. What I have done is dug up a load of blocks. So now the magic will happen. Make sure I'm holding down shift while I hit 7 because I don't want to overwrite my land. Loaded the state for slot 7, and Fangwania is now... Oh, let me tell you about this quirk. So when the land is loaded, when the land is saved, it's saving the state of every single block in your land, and your land is 96 by 96 blocks. That is 6 times 16 chunks, because the data is stored in 16 by 16 by 256 columns of blocks, known as chunks. And when it saves it, it saves it up to the point where there's air. And then when you load it, if you've built something higher than the air level, in fact, I point this out with my cursor, there are basically sections. So this here marks the start of a new section, and in the loaded section that is air, but in the previous one it was the top of that tower that the system was originally provided with. And so I've got these ghost castles. They're not actually there. You can't, in fact you can see that there's sort of weirdness in that there are gaps in there. And if I was to run out of this land as quickly as I could, and then come back again, yeah, I've got the rendering distance set to 3 blocks just to make it quicker. Yeah, so there we go. All those ghost castles have disappeared, and somebody walking in from outside wouldn't have seen those. It's just people who are in the land who would have seen them. So that is the trick, basically. The first thing you should do when you get a token, well, the first thing you should do is get a token, and the next thing you should do is level it up to at least level 2, so you have 2 save slots. And then when you go into your land, the first thing you should do is save the land in its pristine state in slot 1, then mine away and gather up as many blocks as you can or as you need, then start building and save that to slot 2, and use slot 2 for your saving and slot 1 for your mining. And the other thing is you can mine blocks in one tile area, and then you can run off, and I'm going to demonstrate this practically, because when you show people stuff it makes much more sense to them than when you tell them. So I'm running off to another land south of the Orthohenge that I own called Grow Murphy, and I've still got my inventory of blocks, so I can go and say, okay, I'm going to put a birch block there and there, and I've got some birch leaves. So I'm using the blocks that I mined underground in Fangwania to build a lovely little birch tree. There we go. And that also means that if you go to a futuristic tile, you can pick up loads of concrete and then carry that back to your fantasy tile and build things in concrete. Oh, there it is. See, I made a small birch sapling. Right, that is it's not the most amazing build, really, is it? That was the extent of my Minecraft building abilities, and I was, as I said, irrationally proud of them initially, and then my two eldest sons were having a bit of a snigger, and then they showed me some of the stuff they build and pointed me at some tutorials, and in fact they built this tower on the left here, and then I copied it on the right and started extending it outwards. So my plan really is to just kind of expand this as I feel like it. If I get bored, rather than playing Space Shooter on my phone or some stupid game like that, I can just hop into the Orthoverse, have a little tinker, add a few more buildings and stuff, and then hopefully over the next year or 2 or 3 it'll just turn into something impressive, like the city of Carcassonne in the south of France, or maybe even Rome in Italy. Oh, I am not paying attention to the chat, am I? And that's something I'm supposed to do. So what have we got here? Do you plan to produce more content in 2023 regarding digital identity architectures across Web3? Well, I think I'm going to work on that sort of in passing, given the other projects that I'm working on. I don't think there's anything specific for the Orthoverse that is planned with regard to self-sovereign or self-managed identity. I'm not sure this project would be the greatest place to start with building your own decentralized identity, because it is just an experiment and it's a game. And I'm not sure that a simple system like this, or even more complicated things like Fortnite or Roblox, should be creating identities. And then PFC was the NFT-based portals. Yeah, actually, we could take it further, right? We could have NFTs that do not represent land, but that represent the ability to jump to a specific place in the Orthoverse and sell those. But you've got to be careful, PFC, because before you know it, you are issuing tokens for everything and charging money for them, and it kind of becomes too commercialized. I noticed this with other NFT based games, is they go, okay, we'll have land NFTs, and we'll have avatar NFTs that you buy, and we'll have item NFTs, and we'll allow people to merge them to make more powerful NFTs, and they just, you end up with NFTs coming out your ears, and not everything has to be an NFT. But I think the idea of your land coming with the ability to jump to it would be nice, because it's one of the problems I hear of owning a tropical island, is that you then need a private jet in order to get to it. Scott Lennon was asking, is this post associated with Web 3.0? So I guess by post you mean this project? And if the question is this project, well, yes, it is associated with Web 3.0. It's about offering the opportunity for decentralized technologies to give the game players stuff that they don't currently get in traditional games. So one of the things that triggered this project was when my son accidentally bought 500 euros worth of in-game items in games such as Brawl Stars and Roblox. And when we complained to the software companies, they cancelled his accounts. So then we had we'd lost 500 euros, and he'd lost a couple of years worth of progress in those games. And actually it was the latter thing that he was absolutely gutted by, because you can't get time back. And so for the games to end like that for him was very, very disturbing. And I remember thinking at the time, if you owned your in-game items the way that you own an item in the real world, then at least when they ban you, you would still be able to sell the stuff that you had. So you can't get your time back, but at least you can get your money back. And so that is something that applies to this game, which is that if you buy a land, you own that land, it's under your control, and you can decide to hold on to it and build on it, or you can decide to sell it to somebody else who is willing to offer you money, or you can give it away as a gift, which is something that you can't generally do in games. So there are still some problems because the game is running on a centralized server, and as a result, even if you have an NFT for a land, I could technically go in and say, right, I'm going to ban building on that land. And that is both a bad thing in that it means that I can censor players, but it's also a good thing because it means that if somebody starts managing to build something obscene, then I can reason with them to pull it down, and if they don't, then I can block them from building on their land. But they can then sell their land on to somebody else, and that person can inform me that then a new owner, and then I can re-enable it. So it's not foolproof, it's not flawless, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with this project, is doing stuff practically allows you to find out what the true issues are. And there's an awful lot of hot air in the entrepreneur space with people talking about how they're going to do amazing things, and they haven't actually sat down and got their hands dirty and tried to do it. And when you do it, then you discover what the issues are, and you also discover where the technology really shines. And so I wish that there were more projects like that, but unfortunately, it seems that a lot of entrepreneurship is more about salesmanship and less about quality and delivering. I've kind of come around to accept that, well, it's just the way it is, but there is a part of me that can't let go, and I still find myself having to implement stuff just to make sure I've really understood it. On the plus side, I've learned enough about patenting that I can protect some of the ideas so that I know somewhere further down the line, given that I'm occasionally the first person to have an idea, I can actually get some financial reward, hopefully, for having come up with an idea and run with the ball when I caught it. Unfortunately, as I said, the patent office in the US, which is where I file my stuff, has systemically been weakening patents in the US. But then again, who knows? The pendulum may swing the other way. Maybe at some point Congress will wake up and say, hang on, we've given too much power to the megacorps, time to rein them in. And one of the ways they can do that is to give more support and rights to patents held by small inventors. I guess we shall see. Anyway, more questions coming in. Domi Petog, I don't know how to pronounce that name. There's an umlaut on the O's as well. Is it even an umlaut? Domi says, underrated channel. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It's yeah, well, I don't know what to say. I'm slightly embarrassed, but touched. Thank you. I said I was going to build a house, and given that I said I was going to build a house, I had better build one. So what I'm doing here is I'm rolling the mouse button to move the selector for which, it's kind of like which building block is in my hand, and rolling the mouse down moves it to the right, rolling the mouse wheel up moves it to the left. It stops at one end, so I'm stuck here. I'm rolling the mouse furiously now, but it's not moving. If I go the other way, the frame starts sliding, and then I reach the end, and then I can use the mouse to roll back and forth. And it turns out this is actually surprisingly intuitive. I've got, is it 8 or 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 9 visible areas where I can be holding items, and I can move that 9 width frame up and down a total of, I think, 35 slots. So it's kind of limited that you haven't got infinite supplies, but it gives you a bit more freedom than some of the building apps, building games out there. Right, I need to find these things. Is it cobblestone? Let's have a look. So I'm going to try and copy that house now. So one, yeah, so that's basically got, oh, this is where you guys get to see how incompetent I really am. Then it's 3 across, and we've got brick, and I don't think I picked up any brick, did I? So, oh, hold on, I saw bricks, stone bricks, there we go. So then I'm going to need, gosh, let's go inside. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. It's easier when you follow a tutorial. Oh, before I get building, so this is the house that I built, and I made a cellar, and I had this initial idea that I would mine stuff and store it in an underground vault. So this was my block store for various blocks that I'd mined, but it's kind of pointless now, and given that I suddenly thought, and it's in hindsight, it's obvious that it would be better to go to a different save slot and mine and not worry, just turn that world into a complete mess and keep this as the pristine one. So right, going 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna run out of bricks, aren't I? Yeah, I am. I didn't mine enough bricks, and it's certainly not going to help if I place them there. 1, 2, 3. No doubt I have a very intense look on my face at the moment. Oh, it's difficult to build in the dark as well. 2, 3. So, and I've run out of bricks. Oh, how annoying. Do you know, I can't be bothered to save and load. I'm just going to go and look around. There should be a big hole here somewhere. Yeah, I'm just going to drop in here. What were these ones? Ooh, that is a long way down. Okay, so that's cobblestone. Where are the bricks? Any suggestions? And here we are again. Well, that's what you get when you watch a stream that is playing a mining and building game. You get to see a lot of mining and building, and one of the weird things about building is that if you think about it objectively, it's kind of tedious, but then it's also kind of satisfying. I seem to remember that Winston Churchill used to relax by building brick walls in his garden, and it also turned out that he was a really bad bricklayer. But you know, I think there's something. No, I'm not finding any bricks here, am I? And that's going to get tedious very soon. Let's try digging a little bit deeper. So they should be filling. All the blocks do look a bit the same to me, but my sons assure me. Stone bricks. There we go. Are we at bricks? Are these bricks? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have found the bricks. So we can just dig along here. Everybody breathes a sigh of relief. Okay. So. Okay, Tom's saying he's going to bed. Well, thank you for that piece of information. Oh my goodness, I have just noticed the time, and it is 11:48. 12 minutes to go. Do you know, I hope this has gone as quickly as it has for you. I fear that it may have gone a bit slower, especially since I spent a lot of time digging underground. Maybe next time I'll make sure I have suitable amounts of assets lined up. Although, to be honest, you're probably not really tuning in to watch me just build a house. Hopefully it's more for the conversation while I'm doing so. And the good thing about messing around is it does sort of trigger thoughts and ideas. Anyway, so what I could do now is I could build the rest of that there. Dink, dink, dink. And oop. One there, one there, one there. See, it's pretty fast when you know what you're doing and you've got suitable amount of supplies. And then we need to build a 3-layer one. So this is where the interesting stuff starts to happen in the, well, that's for some interpretation of the word interesting, is that when it gets too high in something like Minecraft or Roblox creative mode, you can just fly, but in the Orthoverse you can't. And so I will shortly show you the trick that is used for that. So, hop. Oh gosh, would you know it? I am 1 brick short. Well, I'm not going to go back and dig up another one. I'm going to stuff a piece of granite in there just to cover for now, and we can swap it later. Right, so the problem you face, well, there's a number of problems. One of them is that it turns out that bricks run out a lot faster than you would expect. That's not meant to be there, is it? It takes a surprising amount of building materials to build even the smallest little house. But that's the power of the third dimension for you. You can pack a lot much more in there. So yeah, and then we need this like that, and so I kind of feel like I was about to say something clever, and then I got sidetracked by placing blocks, and I forgot what it was. Oh yeah, how to build stuff when you can't fly. And the answer is, of course, the same way that you do in real life, namely with scaffolding. And it so happens that there are these utterly useless spruce leaves that you end up picking up, unless you're building trees, so that you can just build yourself a scaffold like that, and that then gives you access to the top, and you can start building higher stuff. So now I'm looking to place oak wood along here. 1, 2, 3. See, works brilliantly. Hop, and then I can hop across. It reminds me, when you get really high up, it's a bit like those photographs of the builders in New York building the skyscrapers, and they're up there on the girders eating their lunch and just walking along there. I mean, absolutely insane by modern standards to go to that kind of height and just walk along it like you're walking along a path. But you know, they didn't have massive cranes back then, so it all had to be done with pulleys and people walking on girders. Plus I think they weren't particularly bothered about health and safety. Right, so have I got this completely wrong? I have, haven't I? I'm making the house slightly taller. Why did nobody tell me? JC says, typical builder, just finished the job with whatever you got laying around. Right, just for that, JC, I'm just gonna place a piece of spruce on there. Oh, that'll get the some people going, won't it? Right, so it turns out that I actually didn't need this much brick at all, and I made the hut too high. Yeah, so this is one of the downsides of building in public, and I really am disappointed that nobody posted in the comments, Keir, your brick wall is only 2 high and you're making it 3 high. So right, anyway, but it looks like I will be short of oak. Well, we could have a house with a floating roof, couldn't we? Let's get those garlics. Right, there we are. Well, I think that's kind of going to give you the idea of how the building works anyway, and you can see what the thing on the right is eventually going to look like when it matches the one on the left. And to be honest, if you have an Orthoverse land, have a go in, dig up some blocks, start building something. I find it surprisingly satisfying. I mean, this hour has flown by for me, and I have had a few evenings, as you can tell by the giant castle up there. Now just imagine the rate at which I built this house, and then look at the size of this and imagine how long that took. But it was just kind of a really great way to unwind at the end of a day, and you're also left with a sense of achievement, because you've got something to show for it. So I started to get why my kids like spending so much time in these sandbox games, because and I think it's more enjoyable than playing a scripted game where you have a plot that advances as you sort of progress through the game, or player versus player games, because there it's sort of I mean, I'm reasonably incompetent when it comes to games these days. I used to be okay back as a teenager when I had the time to learn them. I played a bit of Fortnite, and there are just people there who, well, I don't know if you've ever gone and watched a video of like esports Fortnite games. It's just insane what those people can do. I cannot follow what is happening. It reminded me a bit of fencing, which I used to do when I was an undergraduate, in that the people who've been doing fencing since they were 8 years old, it was so instinctive that me as an 18-year-old learning how to do it, I just couldn't keep up with them. They describe it as chess on legs, and it kind of is, because all the moves are trained so that they become instinctive, and that frees up the mind to make decisions, and amateurs like myself just didn't have time to do that. Right, there we go. See, that matches it better, doesn't it? So we're actually building something now that and I can't get up there. I need to go and take my scaffolding apart. Right, so and I've dug a hole in the ground there. Well, that's okay, because I'm going to build a little road down here anyway, so I don't want there to be grass there. Right, let's try going up on with the spruce leaves again. Up. So my original plan was to get my kids to build this stuff, and I think they will. It's just that they've put a lot of time into other games, and I think if they felt that this was being seen by more people, it's the kind of, you get the crowds to come, then everybody wants to come. I'm hoping they will start doing more, because they made a really good start and then it just sort of dried up. And they said it was fun, but there were other things they would rather spend their time on than helping their dad have the coolest land in the Orthoverse. I have to do it myself. Right, there we go. Looking good. So you can see how that works anyway. And if I can do this, then quite frankly I think anybody can. And I'm sure that people with more sandbox game experience would just really fly through this kind of stuff. All right, oak, wood, there we go. Got to fill in these corners, and then I need to work out what the top of those corners is. Right, up. I'm starting to understand why a lot of those YouTube streamers and Twitch streamers sound like they do. Just please, if I start to sound like too much like one of them, let me know so I can do something about it before it's too late and I am irrevocably transmuted into one of them. Oh, so a few more comments. Niraj Badaya. Thanks, Keir, for the overview. I have the Orthoverse NFT also, and just curious to know how to get into Orthoverse and play around. Sorry for my ignorance. Don't apologize for your ignorance. This stuff is very badly documented, and it's developing all the time. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do these live streams, because that way I can show people how it works rather than telling them or writing it in a manual that hardly anyone will read anyway. Plus, it's a lot more fun this way. Did anybody actually join? This time I'm walking around on my own. Last time we had about 5 or 6 people. I was kind of expecting people to be running around and butting in and causing all sorts of havoc, but nope, I'm here on my own. So yeah, Neeraj, yeah, just go in, orthoverse.land, make sure you sign using your MetaMask address that is holding the NFT, and that means that when you then go to that land, you will be able to edit it. And the signature, the thing you're signing, is just a challenge. It's a piece of text, so it's not a transaction, and it's very clearly not a transaction, because I've even put some ASCII art and stuff in it just to make it totally clear that this is not a transaction in disguise. So I think that's important, and I see a lot of sites where they get you to sign something and you look at it and you think, well, it's probably not a transaction, but it doesn't look entirely safe. I think I won't sign it. And in fact, we're coming up for the hour and I'm going to be stopping very shortly, so I'm going to leave it on that note, which is the rule number 1 in well, the rule number one in crypto and blockchain is not your keys, not your coins. Make sure that you own your own stuff, or if you are putting it into custody, be aware that you may lose it. And the second one is, if in doubt, don't sign. So it's very much like legal contracts. If in doubt, don't sign. Do further research. Get some advice from someone you trust. Don't just go in and click yes to a transaction, because that is the way that you get scammed. Make sure you know what you're signing. And it should be that way in conventional law. However, the law has become so complicated that you and I really can't understand the full significance of what it is that we're signing. And this is what is so ridiculous with terms and conditions, that they are written in a language that I can't understand most of the time, and yet I'm supposed to agree to them. And like in Finland, I'm not allowed to be approached by telemarketers trying to sell me a phone subscription, and that is because they're trying to get me to sign up to a Finnish contract and I can't understand it. So I don't see why the same shouldn't apply for terms and conditions on websites. But hey, I'm not a lawyer. What do I know? Right, guys, thank you for all tuning in. I hope you found it entertaining, and I'll have to have a look back to remind myself what it was I actually talked about, because there's this really weird thing with live streams that you get into the flow and you suddenly realize that 10 minutes later that you can't remember exactly what it is that you said. I will hang around in the Orthoverse for another 10 or 15 minutes, if only just to get the roof started on this house. But I will be back next Saturday at 11 o'clock Finnish time. That is 9 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. And I hope to see you all, and maybe even some more people there next week. Thank you all for tuning in. That's it for today.